Libby Cohen, Executive Director of the organization Raise Your Hand Texas, which advocates for public education. Thank you so much and welcome to Eye on Politics.
Thank you, Jack. I'm glad to be here with you.
So, as you know, early voting is underway, and there are a number of constitutional amendments on the ballot, including those which the goal is by the legislature to lower people's school property tax bills. At the same time, there are some school districts in North Texas and presumably across the state that are holding what's called voter approved tax rate elections, which by law are tax rate increases. And so I'm wondering, why are school districts finding the need to hold these elections now?
Sure. Well, it's important for viewers to understand what's happened in school funding, especially in the last 5 years. So, as we've all experienced in our daily lives, since 2019, inflation has been quite significant. And that's had serious impacts for school district operating budgets, just like our own personal budgets. And in order for school districts to have the same buying power that they had in 2019, this past legislative session, the legislature would have needed to have invested $19.6 billion into public education. Now, the legislature
Additional dollars.
additional dollars. Now, the legislature did make a significant investment in public education this past session, but it was to the tune of about $8.4 billion for the biennium. So school districts are still grappling with how to cover that gap that's been created just in the last 5, 6 years, created by inflation. And now that federal COVID relief dollars have all expired, the legislature has acted, but not quite enough to fully make up for the way that inflation is impacting school district budgets. Leaves districts looking for solutions in all kinds of forms.
And as far as, because on one hand, voters are being asked to lower their property taxes, and on the other hand, at the same time, they're being asked by some school districts to raise the property taxes. Is this a good time for school districts to do that, do you think?
Well, I think what's important for voters to understand about the relationship between property taxes, even school district property taxes, and school funding is that when your property taxes go up, funding for your local public school does not necessarily go up. The amount of funding that your local public school receives is decided by formulas that are created by the state legislature. And they reflect the demographics and student characteristics of a given school district. So that means that in an equalized funding system, which is what we have here in Texas, even as property values rise, and or new homes are built, more development comes to an area, and school district property tax collections increase. If those funding formulas haven't increased, then the additional property tax revenue does not lead to more funding for your local schools. This has been a really important source of additional dollars for the state over the last 5 legislative sessions. In fact, over the last 5 legislative sessions, the state has been able to bank just shy of $21 billion in school district property tax increases that have gone above and beyond what the state funding formulas have set for our school districts to receive. So even though we look on our tax bills and we see that our local school district is by far the largest line item on our tax bills, that tax collection doesn't actually decide how much funding my local public school gets.
And so right now you've talked about the need that these school districts clearly have in increasing their revenues to maintain what they already have. And, people, as one lawmaker said, people really need to, weigh these elections carefully. But what are school districts doing to try to, what have they tried to do? Because some of them have had to pass previously deficit budgets where they tap into their savings to make the budget even out. And so, what have they had to do, even with receiving new money from the state legislature?
That's right. It was estimated in the last school year that around two-thirds of school districts in the state passed deficit budgets. You can only do that for so many years. And the new dollars that the state has provided are certainly helping, and were certainly an important step in the right direction. But you're absolutely right. School districts are having to continue to make really difficult choices. Different school districts are handling that in different ways. We're seeing programs cut, we're seeing staff reductions, we're seeing campus closures all across the state. And none of these decisions are easy for a school district, and all of them have a real impact on the students in those classrooms.
And you said before you brought up COVID funding. And why? Explain to me. Obviously, COVID funding ended from the federal government because thankfully we got through COVID. But did that create some issues for some school districts?
So, school districts in Texas ended up receiving in the neighborhood of $15 billion dollars in federal COVID relief funds. Now, those federal funds were uh, short term, they had an expiration date on them, and they were intended to support specific measures that were needed to address the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. So whether that was a new HVAC system that helped to improve kind of air quality inside of a school building, or whether those were additional support positions that were helping students re-enter classrooms after a season of kind of compromised learning, or for some students, no schooling at all. Now, uh, those dollars also helped school districts navigate something that they weren't planning for in that same span of time, which was this sharp rise in inflation. And for a little couple of years there, um, that allowed school districts to kind of take the edge off of some of those increased costs that they saw. But now that those dollars are gone, there's nothing to sort of blunt that edge of inflation that continues to be present in school district budgets.
And my last question to you is because you said before the school districts would have needed more than $19 billion dollars in new money to catch them up with the rate of inflation, et cetera. And so I'm wondering going forward, then you seem to be saying the state legislature needs to continue to inject new money into the school districts.
The state legislature has more work to do. And viewers should understand that while it would have taken $19.6 billion dollars just to keep up with inflation since 2019, Texas is so far behind the national average in per pupil funding. It would have taken over $47 billion dollars just for Texas to reach the national average in per pupil funding. So, absolutely, at Raise Your Hand Texas, we believe that the state needs a long term plan to really bolster and grow the amount of funding that we're sending to our public schools.
We will leave it there. Libby Cohen, Executive Director of the organization Raise Your Hand Texas. Thank you so much. We
Thank you
appreciate
so much, Jack.
it. You bet.